By now, you're probably familiar with this laptop right here, the Razer Blade 14, souped up with some of the best specs you can possibly get in a notebook in this size. I've always been interested in seeing a smaller form factor get that big power, so of course, this has been an exciting last few weeks as I've gotten to know my first ever Blade laptop. And really, what a time for me to try one out. With the same tried and true, basically iconic Razer stylings, RTX graphics, and AMD at the CPU helm, has the company achieved the most compelling small, nimble gaming laptop? Well, we're about to find out, because I did put more than just video games through this gaming machine. It's Joshua Vergara. What's going on, everybody? Here's what worked and what didn't with the Razer Blade 14. Like I mentioned a second ago, this is the first time that I'm doing a more long-term look at a Razer Blade, and I have to say, they really know their way around a notebook design. Granted, this might be a design that those of you who are Razer faithful are super familiar with by now, but it's still really cool and highly functional. The Blade 14 is boxier and sharper around the sides and the edges, shying away from curves and jagged lines. It's also small enough to fit in basically all of my bags, and I have a lot of them, even ones that are more geared towards smaller MacBooks, but it's also just thick enough to have all of the essential ports here in the I/O. There's even a full-sized HDMI port on the right side. One nice touch is having a USB-A and USB-C port equally represented on either side, so that you're not stuck with putting a wired mouse or any other peripheral on an awkward side. Now, given that this is an AMD-powered laptop, however, neither the USB-C ports support Thunderbolt connections. I am still able to connect my trusty dock to the laptop via USB connections, but Thunderbolt would have been nice to have. Seriously, this is one of the easiest laptops to travel with, allowing me to be assured that I'll have enough to work, play, and edit on the go. But in making this laptop as sleek as possible, there are some things to consider once we open things up. Things just feel a little cramped. Opening up the laptop with one hand is really easy, as you can see here, and it reveals the usual Razer deck, but the size of the laptop does mean that things had to be a little squeezed in. The screen is a 165Hz capable 16:9 aspect ratio Quad HD panel, which is all really great, but at 14 inches it can feel a little small. Perhaps I'm a little bit spoiled these days by 16:10 aspect ratio displays, but I can't help but look at this bottom portion here, this chin, and think I would not have been mad if Razer branding was no longer there. The screen is also not the brightest that I've ever used. I did have to contend with that during a script writing session at a local coffee shop. It wasn't unusable, but straight daylight on the display was harsh enough to lower the viewing fidelity. Now, the other thing that Razer had to do was minimize the keyboard as much as possible. Now, there are certain quirks about this keyboard that I admit might be a little bit weird for some people, but they didn't bother me too much. The delete button being right next to the power button, the lack of a fingerprint reader in that power button, and the up and down arrow keys being much thinner than the rest. But really, overall, it's a pretty good typing experience. It's just not my favorite. It's more or less your basic chiclet style, with just enough travel in the keys to give you some tactility. I'm still able to type on it quite fast, but I've enjoyed better keys elsewhere. Of course, this is a Razer product, so there is chroma RGB lighting. I'm not huge on really customizing the whole RGB everything lifestyle, but the lighting is really appreciated for illuminating the otherwise totally black keyboard stylings. There was one thing that I really appreciated though, it's how the function keys light up when you're holding down the function button. It's a really nice touch. I do give Razer a lot of credit for maximizing the space that they had to play with here, even if each thing got a little hampered in the process. I have to add this particular part in, just on this section. The speakers. They're not bad, but they could definitely use more body and fullness. But even if I was able to plug headphones in using the jack here on the side, the driver in that audio jack could also use a bit more oomph as well. So clearly, while there is a ton to enjoy underneath the surface, everything that is meant to bring that power to life is a slight exercise in compromise. Still, it doesn't keep this laptop from being impressive and super fun once you do hit that power button and see everything light up. Because obviously, the main reason why you would want a laptop like this is to have powerful gaming level performance on the go, and Razer really nailed that part. My particular laptop came with the RTX 3070, but these laptops can go all the way up to the 3080. And as I've been learning in my time with all of these gaming laptops, the 3070 is kind of the sweet spot when it comes to the power output that these notebooks can even put out. While the 3080 is a highly sought after graphics card in general, it can get hampered down by the TDP of the laptop when it's around like 100. So this 3070 model that Razer let me check out has been everything that I have expected. Games with plenty of ray tracing elements performance can run well, and basically every game I've thrown at this screen has been able to run at high to max settings. It's seriously great to be able to play anything past and present on this small screen with a little bit of future-proofing built in. And if I really want a big screen, I can always just take advantage of that HDMI port. The feeling of versatility is what really helps make this spec sheet and ultimately the Razer Blade 14 altogether feel so cool. But of course, content creators like myself might look at gaming machines for more things. Gaming is the focus here, but the 3070 also does help with my render times when video editing. I've used this laptop for a couple of projects and have enjoyed the same good performance that I have on my larger laptops or even my desktop that rocks a full-sized 2080. Now we're going to get to it more in a little bit, but there are some things to keep in mind if you decide to use this Blade 14 as a workhorse. But by and large, the Blade 14 is able to handle basically everything that I've been able to throw at it, thanks to the graphics, but also because AMD is now at the helm. The Ryzen 5900HX marks Razer's shift into AMD-powered laptops, and it kind of makes sense since they want their smallest offerings to pump out big power. Now, regardless of where you are on the spectrum of Team Blue or Team Red, I think it's pretty clear that laptops like this are going to start popping up more across the board because processors from both sides are improving in their own ways. But of course, AMD's processor is at the helm here, and there are some tangible benefits when that is involved. Battery life is actually quite great on here, especially when you fiddle with the power settings and maybe you're a little more conservative on the screen brightness. I've been able to get 6 hours straight with my usual productivity workflow, which includes script writing, YouTube playing in the background at the same time, and plenty of web browsing. Given its size, the laptop will get inevitably hot under especially gaming load, which also means that the fans will get quite loud to cool things down. But it does take quite a bit to get to that point. For my everyday usage, I basically never hear the fans until I hit that render button or I hit run on any of my games in Steam. AMD is definitely proving themselves as a go-to for sleek and nimble laptops like this, and even if this is a gaming machine, that shift to Ryzen does help the Blade 14 achieve a slightly more hybrid identity, but I do have to admit that it's not quite all the way there yet. If you're a gamer on the go, there's no question that this is one of the most exciting releases, and Razer should be applauded for that. But if your workload is also as intensive as your gaming, this is not going to blow everything else away just yet. I mentioned before the rather cramped experience, which I did adjust to, but I'm still not really jazzed by. Typing away for hours on end, and especially staring at the smaller screen for long editing sessions, eventually puts a strain on things. Battery life might be great, but eventually you'll be plugging in either to charge back up or to get better power output for gaming or editing. And the big charging brick is quite the lugger. It'll take up more space, almost as much as the laptop itself. And then the rest of the specs come into play, namely the fact that there's just 16 gigabytes of RAM on here and it's all soldered on. To be fair, I was actually surprised that my video editing flow didn't bog down the system, and that might be due in part to the CPU's handling. But I know that eventually I'll be handling high-res photos, 4K video, and popping in and out of different projects, all while a browser with a dozen tabs and YouTube playing my background tunes all together will eat up that 16 gigabytes in a hurry. You see, ideally a workflow doesn't have to adjust to the specs that are given, but the fact that the other way around isn't possible here is a bit of a bummer. So clearly, the Razer Blade 14 is still a gaming machine, one that has achieved big power in a small package, and you can blow up the experience by connecting peripherals like monitors and whatnot. But unless gaming and more, let's say, casual productivity usage will be the lion's share of your time on this notebook, I'd say it's best to really assess what you'll be doing on this laptop before you spend all of that money. As the only 14-inch option that can actually pack a RTX 3070 or 3080, perhaps the price is rather justified, but upwards of $3,000 is still a lot to ask. And so let me ask all of you, would you end up spending that much for one of the most nimble yet most powerful laptops that are available right now? Let me know if you would in the comment sections down below, and let me know what you think of the Razer Blade 14 in general. I'm having a lot of fun checking out all of these laptops, gaming forward or not, being able to use them for all of my workflows and for my work and play. So I'm having a ton of fun here. If you like what you saw, drop some likes on this video, get into the comment sections, and continue engaging with my videos so I can continue making videos like this. With all of that said though, look forward to even more from the world of tech by subscribing to my channel. With all of that said though, I'm going to go ahead and call it on this one. Thank you so much for watching. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and enjoy your tea, everybody.